Welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series, the place where we spotlight Riot sponsors and partners. My name is Jen Morgan, and I'm the Virginia Program Lead for Riot. Just a couple of quick reminders before we get started today. The first is that this event is being recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and uploaded to the meetup pages where you registered for this event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please place them in the chat. We will read the questions aloud at the end of the presentation. Finally, please keep yourself muted throughout the event to help mitigate background noise. Today, we have Paige Niedringhaus to discuss why IoT needs its own Create React app. Paige, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So, hey, everybody, it's really nice to be here. I am very excited to be talking to you about Internet of Things development and kind of the intersection of web development. So without further ado, I am going to start sharing my presentation and we will get going from there. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I believe that everybody should be able to see my screen now. So I am Paige Niedringhaus. I am from a company called Blues, which does Internet of Things development. And we're going to talk about how Blues is really kind of entering the space as what you might consider the Create React app for IoT. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why I actually wrote this talk. And it's because today I see IoT development as being where web development was several years ago. Create React app, if you're familiar with it at all, kind of brought in a new era of web development because it simplified a lot of the most painful parts of starting to build a new application. And I believe that IoT development can do much of the same by addressing similar problems in a similar fashion. So let me tell you a little bit about myself before we get too much further down the road, because I am actually a web developer by trade. I am not an IoT dev. I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a firmware person. So for me, IoT development with things like breadboards and microcontrollers seemed fairly unapproachable when I first joined Blues as someone who was coming from pixels and browsers and all the good things that you know with web development. But I will say that within 6 weeks of starting there, I had built my own GPS asset tracker. I had pushed its location data into a low-code dashboard so that I could actually see it on a map. And it got me to believing that this Internet of Things development is not as hard as everyone makes it out to be. So my goal for this talk for you today is to demystify the Internet of Things and show that it's really not so hard to get started with it for any kind of developer who's at any level. So for today's agenda, we're going to talk about three main things. We will talk about the unfulfilled promise of the Internet of Things, because when it first debuted, there were some pretty lofty goals set for it. We'll talk about how Create React app reinvigorated web development. And then we're going to eliminate some of that Internet of Things development pain with some strategies that we take from Create React app. And I'm also going to throw in some live coding demos. So be ready for things to hopefully work, but they may go haywire. You never know. So first, let's level set and talk about what is the Internet of Things. And it is an idea that has existed for over 30 years now, but at its most basic level, it is physical objects that are connected to the internet. So when you're thinking IoT, think things like smart thermostats, like Nest thermostats, think about smart wearables like Fitbits or Garmin's, and think about smart transportation like the self-driving cars that we're working on and piloting today. So let's get on to the unfulfilled promise of IoT. Back in 2011, Cisco predicted that there were going to be 50 billion IoT devices that would be connected to the internet by 2020. Pretty high goal. However, by the end of 2021, we had only 12 billion IoT devices that were actually connected to the internet. Now that is expected to grow to 27 billion by 2025, but it was more than 4 times short of what Cisco had originally predicted 10 years prior. So you might be wondering, why is there this massive disparity? Well, the biggest thing is that getting started with a new IoT project is still really difficult. It is complex. It is expensive. And there are not a lot of roadmaps so that you can go from a working proof of concept to an actual production application. And the bottom line is that 75% of IoT projects that are undertaken today fail, which is pretty massive. And I think it was summed up best by the founder of the company that I work for, Blues, the great Ray Ozzie. He summed it up as complexity kills. It sucks the life out of developers. It makes products difficult to plan, build, and test. And he's right. The more moving pieces that you have, the more complex a task seems, the less likely it's probably going to succeed. So that's kind of IoT and where we're at today. Now let's take a step back and let's talk about web development back in 2016. Let's contrast IoT development now with that. So back in 2016, building a new website from scratch was a lot of work. There were a lot of competing JavaScript frameworks, but it was still problematic. We had Angular, we had the old standby jQuery, Backbone was very popular, and then there was a newer one that was coming onto the scene called React. But what really made the difference was in 2016, when Create React app came onto the scene. Suddenly, devs could spin up a new React site in just one line of code. So in one fell swoop, Create React app addressed so many of the pain points of web development, and it just keeps improving and pushing the community forward, even to this day. So that got me to thinking, there are a lot of things that we can learn from Create React app and how it reinvigorated the web development community. It gave it a shot in the arm that it really needed. And can we apply some of those strategies to IoT development now? And I think the answer is yes. So today I want to look at some of the common pain points that are existing around IoT development and look at how Create React app solved for similar problems and take some of those solutions and translate them into IoT development. But before we can get to the pain points, I want to introduce you to some of the players who will end up starring in a lot of our solutions to our IoT woes. So as I said before, I work for a company called Blues, and we are an Internet of Things development company. So the main thing that Blues is dedicated to is reducing the complexity of making IoT products and accelerating the shift towards a connected, intelligent world. And we want to do that by making wireless IoT easier for developers and more affordable for everyone. And you might be asking, how do we do that? Well, we provide the 2 main pieces of the IoT puzzle. We have the note card, which is the 30 by 35 millimeter device that has a prepaid cellular IoT connectivity right out of the box. And we have Note Hub, which is a hosted cloud service for securely routing note card data to your cloud app of choice. And the thing is that these 2 work together. So the Note Card and Note Hub are really the device to cloud data pump that most IoT devices need to be able to get data off of your device and onto the internet. So let's talk a little bit more about the Note Card. As I said, it is a 30 by 35 millimeter system on module device. So it is just a little bit bigger than a postage stamp. It is designed to be low power. We offer 2 different flavors. We have the global cellular, which with GPS, or we have a Wi-Fi. Cellular is probably what you'll want, but Wi-Fi is great when you're prototyping. Each note card comes preloaded with 500 megabytes of cell data and 10 years of service. We have a JSON-based API, so you don't need to learn some new programming language to be able to program and communicate with your note card. And if you prefer to program in something like Python or Go or Arduino or C++, we offer the ability to use those as well. So if you're using some sort of microcontroller along with your note card, that's totally fine. And then finally, we offer multiple different types of cellular, whether you're in North America, where you might be using NB-IoT, or whether you're in East Asia or somewhere else, we offer a variety of different bands to meet the different needs. So now we can talk about Note Carrier, which is a custom board for easy prototyping of early IoT proof of concept devices. We have a number of different note carriers for different types of scenarios. The first one being our Note Carrier F, which has a feather compatible socket down at the bottom. So if you're using some kind of a microcontroller, you can slot it right in along with your note card. We have the Note Carrier A, which is for any kind of microcontroller, and it has onboard antennas built in. We have the Note Carrier B, which is our smallest form factor. It's great for putting into tight spaces and retrofitting existing IoT devices or existing devices and bringing them online. And then we have the Note Carrier Pi, which slots right on top of a Raspberry Pi. So if you're programming with that, you can connect your note card to a Raspberry Pi as well. And now we'll talk finally about NoteHub, which is our secure cloud environment that I was referencing earlier. All note cards know how to connect and send data to NoteHub right out of the box. So for NoteHub, you will be able to transform and route IoT data to anywhere else on the web. You can also use it to manage fleets of devices, and you can use over-the-air firmware updates. So it's great for not having to go out into the crowd to actually be able to share your devices. I'm just going to check the chat really quickly. Okay, so we're good. Yeah, so we can do firmware devices updates. And then finally, we can also do secure communications. So you don't have to worry about potentially having to set up or worry about your data being unencrypted or intercepted while it's being transmitted from your IoT device to NoteHub. We use off the internet communications for that. Okay, so now it's actually time to talk about the pain points of IoT development. So the first one that was addressed is being forced to reinvent the wheel. And when I say reinvent the wheel time and again, I think about something that would be typically standard for any IoT device, like say, just getting the data from the device into the cloud and being able to read that data. So this was something that React kind of had to do in terms of getting started with a new web development application. So when React was faced with a similar situation, Create React app solved for one of the hardest parts of taking away all of the hard pieces of getting started with a new web pack or a new app. So with just one different command, npx create react app my app, it took away the wiring up of webpack configs. It took away the npm scripts. It took away the empty folder and the blank screen that face the developer as they prepare to build the next web application. That's the not fun part of starting a new project. So instead, you could just use this one command. You could cd into your newly made folder on your app, on your desktop, and you had a new project that was just up and running. It loaded in the browser, it started up, and it gave you a good starting point to be able to get on with the business of building the next cool thing. So Blues has an IoT solution that we can take that from. We have the note card and we offer NoteHub. And it seems like for every IoT project, we kind of have the same sorts of hurdles to cross. The big one being device data into the cloud. How do I get it off of my device and into the cloud? And that's what the note card and NoteHub are for, because the note card comes preloaded with all the basic utilities you need to get going. It has the out-of-the-box connectivity and knows how to talk to NoteHub. It has 500 megabytes of data that's already loaded onto it. It has no contracts or monthly fees, so you don't have to worry about some subscription that's constantly being eaten into. And it offers the secure data communication that I was talking about earlier. So it takes care of the necessary stuff, which is the connectivity, and the developers can get on to the more interesting part of actually building their solutions to solve the particular problems. So with that, we are going to go to our very first demo. So I am going to close up this screen. And I am going to screen share to this screen. So now we're on screen 1. And I am going to show you right here, I have a note carrier A. I have a cellular note card connected to it. And I'm going to show you how we can actually program this note carrier with just a few commands, or this note card, excuse me, and start sending data from it into the cloud. So the first thing that I'm going to do is come over to our Blues developer documentation site, which is called dev.blues.io. And the reason that I do this is because we actually have a way to communicate and program these note cards directly from our site instead of having to download a CLI, although you can if you want to, but we can do it directly through the browser. So I'm going to open up our web REPL. I am going to connect our note carrier to my computer using a micro USB control connector. And now it's hard to see, but it is indeed connected. It's just a very short cable. And I am going to connect through this USB note card. So it shows me that it is an option, and I'm going to pair to it. And we can see already that I am now connected to our note card. So I am going to run a few JSON commands to show you just how easy it is. So the first thing that I'm actually going to do is factory reset this note card to like it is when it's brand new. So I'm going to do a card.restore and delete true. And when I hit enter, we're going to actually lose the connection to our note card because it is essentially wiping itself clean. And we can see terminal lost connection to the device. It's totally fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to NoteHub, where I have already signed in. But if you want to, you can set up a free account. It's very easy to get started. It's notehub.io. And I'm going to create a brand new project. And for this project, I'm going to name it the Riot project. And I'm going to go ahead and create that project. And once NoteHub has created it, I can copy this project's name because that's what we're going to use to tell the note card, this is where you should send your data. All right, so we are going to attempt to reconnect to our note card. And nicely, our REPL says that this NoteHub needs a product UID, which was what we just copied from NoteHub. So we're going to go ahead and set it. So with more JSON, we're going to do rec hub.set, which says to NoteHub, this is what you're doing. We give it a product and we paste in the project name that we created before. And I am going to set my note card into continuous mode. And the reason that I'm doing this is because it will be talking more frequently to NoteHub when I do this, which is great for demos. It's more power intensive. So if low power is something that your project needs, you probably don't want to set it into continuous mode. But if you have steady state power because it's in a facility or you are using it, with a battery of some magnitude, this is fine. All right, so we have set our project and now we are just going to tell the note card to do a sync. So a new request, hub.sync, and it will attempt to sync with NoteHub. And then if we actually want to check and do more than just watch for the green arrow or the green line up here, the progress bar, we can actually do a request. And this is going to be hub.sync.status. And the REPL will tell us. So it's waiting for wireless service. It's trying to do a self-registration. And hopefully we will get a success in pretty short order. And the way that we can check that, so if we go back over to our project, and I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page. And once it has actually synced, we will see that it's going to show up in our devices. So we'll give that, another 15 or 20 seconds, and then we will go back to the presentation. And of course, because I'm doing a live demo, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it looks like we may have had a success. So let's run our status one more time. It looks like the IP has initialized, so that's a good sign. And if we go back over to our project and refresh the page once more, the device is not going to show up yet. But we're right there. I can tell it. Come on, little device. You got this. Connect using TLS. Network is up. Come on, little project. All right. We're going to let that go. And we will go back over. And when we come back for our second piece of the demo, which is going to continue to use the note card, hopefully it will have connected by then. But this is live demos, so that's what you get. All right. So we're going to head back over to our slides. I am going to go back to sharing right here. All right. So let's move on to our next piece of the IoT development and the pain points of it, and that is archaic technology. So it is sometimes a very painful learning curve, to say the least, to find IoT development expertise, and it can be a major expense because up until now, AT commands are the de facto for cellular modem programming, and they originated in the 80s, but they're still considered the norm. So finding experts who know how to deal with this is not always the easiest thing. So when React was faced with a similar situation of, jQuery was getting a little bit long in the tooth, and it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of people who were great with, frameworks and things like that, React took a solution of more JavaScript and less magic. So if you know JavaScript, you are already halfway to knowing React. React relied on traditional JS instead of some React-specific syntax, which made the whole framework more approachable than, say, Angular. And I know that many might argue today that React hooks and the new directions that React has taken have largely eroded that less magic approach, but that's for a different conversation. So if we go on to Blues, we have some similar solutions. Blues believes that if you know JSON, even a little, you can already do so much with IoT. More JSON, less AT commands. So you can program a note card. As you can see, this is an example of a JSON request. You can read data out of NoteHub, and I'll show you that in just a minute. You can actually see that this is what a NoteHub event would look like. And you can even interact with the NoteHub API with just JSON. So it's really a lot less having to learn a new syntax or a new language and more using something that a lot of people are already quite familiar with. And with that, we are going to go on to our second demo, which I'm actually going to configure a note card to do asset tracking with just a couple more lines of JSON code. So let's get out of here, and I will go on to share my main screen where we have been programming our note card up till now. And let's go over and hope that this device has actually added itself to our project, which it looks like it has. So here is our note card's ID. And if we go over to our events tab, we can see that it's actually started sending some events into our project. So we can actually open up one of these events. And there's not too much to do with them yet, but you can click into any one of them and you can go over and you can see the raw JSON. And this is exactly what is getting sent into the NoteHub. So we can see that this one was just an environment variable event. It was doing its first sync and it was connecting. So not a lot there to see really, but that is okay because we haven't really asked it to do anything yet. So like I said, we're going to actually program this note card that's still attached to my computer to be an asset tracker. And we're going to do that in about 2 lines of code. So I'm going to go back to the web REPL, which is still open. I'm still in the dev.blues.io site, and I'm going to add a new request. And the first one is going to be a request for card.location.mode. We're going to set the mode to periodic, and we're going to set the seconds to 30. And we enter that. And basically what this request is saying is that I want this card to track its location every half minute. It's going to take a GPS reading. It's going to figure out where it is, and it's going to note that down. And then the way that we're going to actually get it to send to NoteHub and record that data is with card.location.track, start of true, and sync of true. And what this command says is, I want you to start storing that location data every time the card takes a reading, and then immediately sync it to NoteHub and start doing this basically right now. And then the last thing that we're going to do is initiate one more hub.sync to get these changes to start to take effect in NoteHub. And now I am going to take my still connected note card, give it a little bit of a shake so that it recognizes that there is some motion for it to take to record. And we're going to let it do its thing. And I'm not going to wait this time for the NoteHub sync to take effect, because when we get to the third part of the demo, hopefully we will have some location data that we can use. So let's go back to our presentation for now. All right, third pain point that we're going to talk about is the lack of innovation. And if you're thinking about it, there seems to have been a little bit of a general lack of innovation in the space in terms of IoT development, if commands from the 80s are anything to go by. So while what we're connecting has dramatically increased in terms of refrigerators, slow cookers, cars, those things that are connecting to the internet, how we're doing it is still a little bit mired in the past. The AT commands that I mentioned earlier, the MQTT protocol that remains the standard, those are the kind of things that you would typically use even today for cellular IoT connections and data transmission. So when React was thinking about how to basically keep from becoming a thing of the past and a relic, it took kind of a can't stop, won't stop approach, similar to Rocky. So one of the things is that React keeps innovating. It keeps updating, it keeps improving the framework, it keeps leveling up. We get things like hooks, we've had concurrency, we've had suspense, we've had server rendered components. So even though some of the changes as they're rolled out initially have us scratching our heads, it really helps to keep React in the headlines. It keeps it competitive in today's world where the next big framework comes up almost weekly. And it's really given it a lot of staying power. So when Blues was shown, this is the way that typical IoT development is done, they took it and we threw out the old IoT playbook. Instead of doing things the existing way, we took a new approach. So instead of AT commands and MQTT protocols, program everything with JSON. Reconfigure the device to cloud connection so that NoteCard and NoteHub already know how to talk to each other. And we regularly release new firmware, new hardware, and new software to keep making the experience better and development easier. And a lot of our features are driven based on community feedback and a better developer experience overall. So, that is something that is always at the forefront of our minds as we're pushing forward. Okay, so another pain point for IoT is narrow solution parameters. And this is when devs are locked into programming in maybe certain languages. So C, C++, Python, or potentially they're locked into sending their IoT data to a particular cloud provider. Once you start sending it to AWS, you never stop. Or maybe they have to use specific microcontrollers because that is, all that is available to them. So they have a lot less choices or a lot more guardrails that might not necessarily play to their team's needs, their strengths, or what they prefer to use. So React's solution when talking about narrow solution parameters and a lot of guardrails was to let people have it their way. They took a very unopinionated stance about a lot of things. For instance, how code bases are structured. Architecture, really, whatever pattern that you like to follow, that's what React wants you to be able to follow. Organize the project how it makes sense for the team. React isn't very rigid or prescriptive about how it should be used. Now, I say that, but there are also some caveats to that. Some of the frameworks that use React, for instance, Next.js, Gatsby, things like that, they have much stricter usage rules that they want their users to follow. But for the most part, React stays out of the way and lets those frameworks kind of make those rules, which a lot of people are happy to follow. So React stays out of it. The frameworks are the ones that get into it. So Blues wants developers to be able to use what works best for them as well. So we want you to be able to write your IoT code using a variety of SDKs, whether you like C++ or CircuitPython or Go or Arduino or something else. There is most likely an SDK that either we have written or the community has written. One I'm thinking of in particular is Rust. We have one community user who wrote a Rust SDK. The same for where your IoT data goes once it leaves NodeHub. You can route it to Amazon Web Services. You can send it to Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Snowflake, DataCake. Really, wherever you would like to send it from there, we're happy to make that possible for you. And then finally, we want you to be able to either build a brand new IoT project or to retrofit an existing analog device and make that kind of the same level of difficulty. So we provide that connectivity piece and then let you, outfit it as you see fit from there. And with that, we're going to get to our third piece of the demo. And this portion of the demo, I'm actually going to take the data that is now hopefully in NodeHub, and we're going to send it to a low-code dashboard that I was describing to you earlier. So we're going to display it in a dashboard called DataCake and send some data over to it. And I'm going to show you that you can do that in just a matter of minutes. So going to exit that. I will reshare my main screen. And you can see we are back on the developer hub. And I'm going to go ahead and go back over to my NodeHub project. And if we look here, we have a few more pieces of data that have been sent over. So we've got some health.qo, we've got some environment variables, and hopefully in not too much time, we will have some track.qo events. So let me show you DataCake. If you're not familiar, DataCake is a really cool low-code dashboard. They have a free tier as well. And so I've already got some projects that I've set up with DataCake, but basically adding a new device to DataCake, a new Blues Wireless note card, for instance, is really simple. We're going to go ahead and add a new device. We're going to select the API. We're going to hit next. And actually, because we work with DataCake pretty frequently, they have a Blues Wireless note card product from Template that we can use, which kind of pre-populates some stuff and makes it easier for us to get a new project set up. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then I am going to grab my device ID from out of NodeHub, which I'll paste into the serial number here on DataCake. And I'm just going to call this the Riot note card. And we're going to go ahead and select the free tier and add our device. And now we can see that we have the Riot note card that has just showed up in our devices list. So if I click on it, I see already that it's got, a pretty nice little dashboard. We've got some card temperature, voltage, cellular data, a map widget. So there's some nice stuff here. And what we have to do is actually go over to the configuration tab. And I am going to scroll down until I get to this HTTP endpoint, which I'll copy. And then over in my NoteHub project, I'm going to go to the routes tab. And routes is how you tell NoteHub, when I get new data, I want you to send it out to these particular things. So you can create a new route, and you can see that we have the general HTTP, which is what we're going to use, but we also have Azure, Google Cloud, ThingWorx, Twilio, Edge Impulse, Slack. We have a lot of routes that are pre-configured for you. If you already know that you're going to be sending it to a particular cloud provider. So we're going to go with the general HTTP route. I am just going to call this data cake, and I'm going to paste that URL into our configuration and create the route. That's all you need to do. So now we should be able to send our events over to DataCake. And if we come over here, we don't actually have any track.qo events yet, although hopefully I can get this note card to cooperate and make a few for us if I give it a little shake. But in the meantime, we can actually select some of our already existing events, and we can route them to DataCake. And this is one of my favorite things that has been added to NoteHub in the not too distant past. It's the ability to route already existing events that we have in NoteHub to a new provider that you've just hooked up. So this is great if you're trying to debug a new route that you may have set up and it's not, data isn't getting there. You don't need to wait for new data to be generated. You can just reroute existing data and send it over and see what happens. So I'm going to select a few events. I'm going to select DataCake as my route, and I'm just going to hit the route button. And if we go over to one of these events now, and we check out the route log, hopefully we will see that some of our events are actually getting to DataCake. So let's go back over to our dashboard, and we don't really have anything to show just yet, but we will check on that in the future. And just for fun, let's see if we can send a couple of others. Let's maybe try and send this one individually, route that over, and maybe a session.qo, we'll route that over. And if we check out the route log, not seeing any routing events. Let's try this one more time. There we go. Okay. So it looks like DataCake has responded. So that's great. Let's go back to our events and let's try doing this health.qo just for fun. So we're going to route that event. DataCake says thanks. And if we refresh our note card dashboard, let's see if we're just getting any kind of information. Not really, not yet. So I will just give my connected note card a little bit of a shake. We'll go back to our demos. And when we come back for our final live coding demo, we will see what our note card dashboard has to show for us. Okay, so let's go back and continue with our demos. All right, so another pain point, no single source of truth. So there is and has always been kind of a problem with online documentation. It gets out of date very quickly. There are no communities that are, one single place to go for a true answer. And there's no single area of expertise where users can turn to for help. So where do you go when you feel like there is no single source of truth? Well, React took that, and their solution was to make their docs the go-to resource. There was already Stack Overflow that's been around forever. There were lots of decentralized tutorials, but they got out of date quickly. And React was really one of the first frameworks that poured a lot of effort into making its docs the go-to resource for any developer that was looking to learn more. And the team didn't just write the docs once and let them languish. They were revised, they were added onto, they were updated. There were multiple versions of them. And now there's even a whole new set of docs that have interactive code examples. It has visual diagrams, it has guides and challenges. And it just is a really good way to help developers be able to expand their knowledge, progress through the material, and come back to it when they need to. It's really a testament of how good documentation should be done and how the framework itself should be the go-to resource. No matter what your question is, they should be able to either answer it or direct you to somebody who can. So Blues took a similar approach. One of our key tenets is to provide an unmatched developer experience. And in that vein, we offer our developer experience site, which I have just been demoing. It has the interactive web REPL, so you can program your note card. We have a lot of documentation in there, a lot of tutorials, getting started, guides, data sheets, glossaries of definitions and terms, you name it, we probably have it on there. In addition to that, we have a discussion forum. So we have a discourse server that is for any and all questions that users have, whether you're wondering about, the best type of battery to use for your particular project, or why your project is having trouble connecting to a cell tower. You can go in there and get help from any one of our developers who monitor it regularly. We offer a lot of tutorials, code samples, and demos. So we have lots of projects on Hackster. We have an experience accelerator page on our website that shows lots of different examples of how you could use our note cards, and we're continually expanding. So that's something that we also like to offer and talk a lot about. We have office hours with Blues experts. So you have questions, your IoT project just isn't quite working the way that you want it to. You can talk to one of our in-house IoT experts and get help. And then we also have our Blues Amplifier community experts. And these are people who are building really cool stuff out in the community, and they're just using our technology to help them achieve their goals. And they're very cool people. They talk at conferences, they go to meetups, they like to show off what they're working on, and they're very approachable and doing some really cool stuff with it. So with that, we're going to go to our fourth demo, and this is going to be me basically showing you some of the ways that you could use our website to help you find out what you need to know. So if we stop sharing that, come back one more time to our main screen, we're going to head over back to the Blues developer site, and we're going to notice that maybe we're having some trouble with data cake, like my live demo is actually doing. So I'm actually going to search for data cake in our documentation results. And you can see that we have some stuff that is on our website, but we also have results from the community. So maybe you've already looked at our documentation and you still have questions. It hasn't answered whatever problem you're having. With this, you can actually go straight to our discourse server instead and see what other people have done to troubleshoot their own problems. So I'm just going to click into our documentation results, and we're going to come over and see that we have routing data to cloud examples. We have data cake as well as a variety of different options, whether you're doing MQTT or you're trying to send it to AWS or what have you. But it's really nice that we try to give you as much custom information as we can. And we can scroll down through it. We can see how to create a route. We have some information on using JSONata, which is a query language for actually transforming your data. It's there. If you have questions, if you have next steps, what have you, it's available to you there. So let's go back over. really quickly and see what kind of events we have in our project. And of course, we don't have any new tracking events. So our demo, our live demo with our note card is not going quite as expected, but we'll give it a little bit more time and maybe we'll come back to it at the end of the presentation and see if we've got some actual data in our dashboard. Okay, so let's head back over. Into our slides. All right. So another pain point that I talked about very early on was the fact that there is no roadmap to production. How do I go from a proof of concept that is working, but is definitely, not quite ready to be broadcast to the public? How does that go to production ready? Well, for React, they just took everything that you need to go from local development to production without config. They had build scripts included. They had a Webpack config included, code transpilation, code minification, bundling, all of it. Devs don't have to think about any of it. React really did the zero config easy button. And I think that is something that more web frameworks have adopted since then because it just makes sense. Developers don't want to deal with it. And, that's not why I got into web development and website building. It wasn't so I could fiddle with configs. So Blues took a similar approach. We built our note card and our note hub with the end goal in mind. So we baked in a lot of what you need to go to production from the start. The encrypted connection between the note card and note hub, it's all there. The FCC pre-certified hardware, so you don't have to worry about those sort of certifications. The prepaid cellular plan, so you already have data, and the scalable solution. So whether you have one note card or 1,000 note cards, you can easily update them, you can check them, you can send them all new configurations, you can monitor them. We built Blues with the end goal in mind. And finally, our last piece of the IoT pain points during development was the complexity that my company's founder, Ray Ozzie, talked about. So every IoT project that I've ever seen has been a special mashup of ad hoc sensors, controllers, and closures, and code that is held together with chewing gum, duct tape, and a lot of solder. That's a lot of things to keep track of. So when React was faced with that similar sort of complex, lot of things, a lot of moving pieces, they set out to give users the building blocks, enough to get going, but not so much that it couldn't be a very flexible solution. So although each website is unique, they almost all have things like multiple pages to display, data to fetch, and interactions that should happen. So devs were allowed to choose their routing system, their data fetching library, their global state manager, their styling system. React gave them, like I said, the pieces to get started and let them customize and choose the rest. And Blues has taken a similar approach. We provide the IoT connectivity and then we stand back. So we get the data from the device in a field to a cloud where you can then use it. But beyond that, devs are free to choose what microcontroller they want to use, what programming language they prefer, what sensors to attach to their project, and what cloud they would like to route their data to. All that is up for grabs. And if you have questions as a developer, we're happy to answer it. We're happy to show you code samples and example projects and dedicated discussion forums, but you get to choose those things and do what's best for you. So let's recap some of the strategies to avoid the IoT pain. Don't reinvent the wheel if you don't need to. There are a lot of battle-tested plug-and-play solutions, and they exist for a reason. Don't feel that you need to use archaic technology. There is better options than the outdated tech that used to be the only solution for IoT and cellular devices, and they are out there. Don't fear that there is a lack of innovation in the space. We pushed stagnation right out the window when Blues entered, and we're going to continue to do that. Don't conform to narrow solution parameters. So the old adage of not forcing a square peg into a round hole definitely holds true there. We're flexible so that you can use what works best for you and your project. You don't need to worry that there is not a single source of truth. Even if Blues doesn't necessarily have the answer that you're looking for, we can point you in the direction of somebody who can to help get you unstuck. Don't waste time worrying about your roadmap to production. We thought about that at the beginning of building our product, and so you don't have to. And don't get too bogged down in the complexity. So don't worry too much about the details. We give you the basic functionality, and you can go ahead and just make that groundbreaking new product. So I hope that this has inspired you to tackle that IoT project that you always thought was a little bit too daunting of a task to take on. If you want to, you can, you can check out our developer experience site. You can visit our discussion forum. You can see some of our IoT projects on Hackster. And if you use this bit.ly link, you can get 15% off your first purchase with us. And I'm Paige Niedringhaus. Thanks so much for joining me.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thanks so much. We will now take questions from the audience. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat box now, and I will read them aloud.
Yes, contact info. Let me share my screen again, because I do have some in the very last slide.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, so if you'd like to download the slideshow, I have a bit.ly link for that, and then you can find me online. I have my website, which is pageniedringhaus.com. You can find me on Twitter at pniedry, and you can find me on GitHub at PageN11. So yeah, hit me up. I'm happy to talk about it. Happy to chat with you, point you in the right direction.
Fabulous. There's a question that's asking, what are consumption credits?
Yes, so consumption credits are what Blues uses to basically interact with NoteHub. So it is our pricing model. The easiest way probably would be to look at here. Let me leave that screen, come back over here. So everything that happens in NoteHub, mostly in terms of sending data to different places, like sending events to DataCake or what have you, that is something that takes up consumption credits. So every month, every device or every project gets 5,000 new consumption credits, and that lets you do whatever it is that you want to do with your data, whether it's downloading it to a database or sending it out to a low-code dashboard. Or interacting with our NoteHub API. Those all use consumption credits. And if you go to the blues.io website, we actually have a little bit more about that on our pricing page. So let me see. I know that we've had it. Oh, yeah. So we have a little bit more about consumption credit pricing, how many credits you buy and how much it costs per credit, as well as a variety of different services and things that you can do. So routed events using the API, requests to NoteHub, and real-time device messaging, because we offer that with Twilio and things like that. So those are all how consumption credits get used.
Fabulous. Any other questions? Please place them in the chat. So all the questions that I'm currently seeing at the moment. Which board/hardware did you use for this demo?
Sure. So I used the Note Carrier A, which is one of our most standard note carriers. This is, I'll just unhook the one that I have, but as you can see, in my screen, it's little bit bigger than a deck of playing cards. And then the wireless note card that I'm using, I think, is just our standard cellular note card. Since I am in the North America area, I think I'm using the LTEM note card. But as I said, we offer a variety depending on where you are in the world, and it works in 130 countries just out of the box. So yeah, I'm just using one of our most basic note carriers and note card combinations, and it just works.
Awesome. Any other additional questions? I'll just echo that thank you, and this has been very informative. If there's any other additional questions, Paige has provided her information. As a reminder, Riot hosts these lunch and learns weekly on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. You can find a list of our lunch and learns on our meetup page where you registered for this event. This event was recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel and the meetup pages where you registered. Thank you all again for joining. Thank you, Paige, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of their day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It's really nice to present to you.
Bye.